a few months back, we had a breathwork experience here with Jonathan Roberts. It was the breathwave experience. I know that one person was here for that for sure. You were here? Okay, so a couple of people who were here for that. And do you guys remember someone mentioning they weren't exactly sure what they saw a little snippet somewhere online, Instagram or something, with Zach Bush, and he was talking about authenticity. And that authenticity generates 40 times more energy, a higher frequency than love or joy or gratitude alone. So I've seen this little snippet a few times, including when I was away in Nashville at the beginning of last month at the live event that I was at. And so I was curious about where does this information come from, or where does this little excerpt come from? And so I eventually found it about a week ago, and I found the whole 2-hour interview with Zach Bush and this guy called Alex Zek, who has a podcast called The Way Forward. You know it? Or you just, yeah, no? Okay, yeah, no, I see Stephanie nodding her head, and it was just like, in agreement, or you've heard? Because I've only heard this one episode, and it is incredible. And there was so much stuff in there that was informing stuff in our, oh, right, because I talked about it in the prayer class, that is informing our prayer class that Stephanie is in, right. And so anyway, so there was a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to bring into Sunday's talk that I just kind of veered off in a slightly different direction, to the point where I didn't use the quote that ended up informing the name of the title of the talk, and so I never mentioned the title of the talk. And it was like, oh my God, there's a whole thing here on connection that I missed. So I want to back up just a little bit, and I just want to read this definition about forbs or weeds that I found online. Forbs are herbaceous flowering plants that are not grasses, sedges, or rushes. They're also called broadleaf plants, wildflowers, or weeds. They are rarely a dominant species in a plant community, except when climatic or human disturbance events allow a species to become an invasive, noxious weed. Okay, so on their own, they're just doing their own thing, but they can become a poisonous plant or a poisonous invasive weed if humans interfere and cause conditions where this is what the plant has to do. Why is this significant? Well, let me tell you part of a story that's in this interview with Zach Bush and Alex Zek. So Dr. Zach Bush, for those of you who don't know, not only was he a doctor, not only was he a midwife, but he's also a farmer. And he's like super into regenerative organic farming. And he is all about the interconnectivity of everyone and everything on the planet, whether we're talking about nature, whether we're talking about humanity, anything else. And ultimately, there's no separation, there's no difference. There's just this one thing called life. And so he's telling this story in the interview about how in Minnesota there was a species of weed, of this like massive, insanely large, like tall as a Christmas tree kind of weed that could erupt in these farmers' fields where there were these monocrops of whatever being grown. And it would only take weeks for them to go from nothing up to like Christmas tree, size. And they had these massive woody stalks and thorns, and they were so hard to get rid of. And because they were so massive and because they're so incredibly sturdy, that they actually wreck farm equipment. So combines can't go over them, and tillers and whatever, like they will wreck the machines. And so the farmers had to go out in the fields and manually collect these weeds out of the fields so that they could actually do their farming. And so they had to glove up, they had to go with chainsaws or hacksaws or something. They came back all bloody after pulling these things out of the ground. And at some point in this one area on this farm, they decided that, you know what, this isn't working for us, so we're going to shift gears and we're going to switch to regenerative organic farming with no more spraying, and we're going to mix things up. So instead of just having, almonds or corn or whatever it is that they were growing, they started introducing a whole bunch of different types of crops. They did about like 50 different types of ground cover. And within 2 seasons alone, what this one particular farm experienced was these weeds completely disappeared and everything thrived, while across the fence or across the highway or whatever it was, super near, where they were still doing their monocropping and whatever with the sprays, these weeds were growing like crazy, right? Now, not my story, his story, so, if you want to hear the story, listen to the interview because it's a really, really good interview. But the point there is, what's the point? On the one side, this is what they decided to do, while on this side, this is what they continued doing, and they continued experiencing this experience of these crazy weeds. So Zach Bush says, whether we're demonizing the microflora, our microbiome in our bodies, or we're trying to micromanage the ecoflora, nature sort of on the outside, we're going to continue to fall short that you are of nature, nature is you. You can't divorce yourself from nature. Now, it's really interesting because when you look up the definition of nature in the online dictionary, the very first definition that pops up, which is one that he actually says in the interview, the phenomena of the physical world collectively, including plants, animals, the landscape, and other features and products of the earth, as opposed to humans or human creations. So in that definition of nature, humans are not included. Humanity is considered separate from nature. And yet, if there's only one, how is it possible that we could be separate from nature, right? So Zach Bush says that nature deficit disorder is a big, big thing in a lot of cultures. Not so much in indigenous cultures because they kind of know what's going on, but in Western cultures, that there is this deep wound of humanity that is ultimately caused by a deep division or divorce from nature. So because we don't see ourselves as the tree, the grass, the ocean, the rain, the clouds, because we see ourselves separate from it, that disconnect keeps us separate from it, and then that's when we kind of don't understand that whatever we do impacts nature, and that nature is always impacting us. And if we could only get back to this knowing, this understanding, this truth, that everyone and everything is not only interconnected, but is part and parcel of the one thing that is going on, then it means that we are nature and nature is us. And when we do things like monocropping, when we do things like spray, when we do things that are so out of harmony and integrity with the order and intelligence and beauty of nature and how it wants to flourish and evolve, nature is going to do whatever it possibly can to get our attention so that we stop doing whatever it is that we're doing, shift our attention back to the connection, to the interconnectivity, to the wholeness that is always, always present, so that we can live in harmony and with integrity with nature and nature with us. So the question here is, what if we stopped looking at weeds or disease as an attack on us and instead looked at them as life trying to reintegrate, reharmonize, and rebalance itself? And so Zach Bush says, when you stop trying to hack the universe and start trying to receive from the universe, it changes your neurologic system, it changes your immune system, it changes your overall psychology, it shifts your philosophy. So I just want to take a moment and just sort of like put that question out there to you. Have you ever experienced something that feels like it's a massive challenge or an obstacle, or like, oh my God, why is this happening? Only to realize later on down the road, oh my gosh, what a gift and blessing that was. Because had I not experienced that, had I not been hit upside the head with that experience, then I may have continued going along in this non-integrous and non-harmonious way of living. Has anyone here experienced that? Yeah, okay. And so is it a gift and a blessing when you sort of realize, oh my God, like this actually wasn't as bad, or, okay, I'm not going to minimize anything, I'm not going to trivialize anything, because I myself had a massive experience in the summer when I hit my truck. I ran my truck into a retaining wall, a stone retaining wall. I literally hit a wall. Not the metaphorical kind of like, oh, I'm so tired and exhausted, I hit a wall. I literally hit a wall, right? Is my preference to have not hit that wall to learn all the lessons and the insights I got? Yeah, that's my preference. But am I grateful and do I appreciate that that happened because I got all those lessons and insights? 100%. And the reason that that happened was because I wasn't paying attention. because I wasn't being in integrity with who and what I am. I wasn't in integrity with the wholeness that I am at my core. And so I kept separating myself. I kept disconnecting myself. I kept trying to push harder and harder and harder. Do, achieve, 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 right? Prove, prove, prove. I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. Look at me, I'm right here. Instead of just showing up as who and what I am and going take it or leave it. It doesn't matter what you think about me because I know who and what I am. I love who and what I am. As Don Miguel Ruiz says, I am the love of my life. But I need some big reminders every now and then to remind myself of that, to keep paying attention to that. So anyway, when you stop trying to hack the universe and start trying to receive from the universe, it changes your neurologic system. You literally start to think differently, okay? It changes your immune system. You don't get sick as often. You don't get caught, you don't get attacked by the bug or the flu or whatever it is that's going around, right? Is there something going around, really? That's a serious question, okay? Because if it was always about germs or about bacteria or whatever, we would be getting sick all the time. Everybody would be getting as equally sick from everything all the time, right? Because we're all together, we're all hanging out in the same germy, bacteria, virus-ridden air. So why do some people get sick and why do some people not? Why for some people is it 24 hours and for some people it's 3 weeks? Why do some people end up in the hospital, on respirators and whatever? And again, not trivializing anybody's experience, but genuinely asking, why is it such a different experience for people? Well, because when we are in harmony with who and what we are, when we live in integrity with nature and everyone and everything around us, there's no defensiveness, there's no resistance, there's just flow, there's rhythm, right? So weeds and microbes aren't the problem. The pervasive belief that we are separate from the rest of nature, from God, is really and truly what requires tending. Going back to the quote, where he says, whether we're demonizing the microflora or we're trying to micromanage the ecoflora, we're going to continue to fall short that you are of nature and nature is you. You can't divorce yourself from nature. And just like you can't divorce yourself from nature, no one and nothing lives in a vacuum. You can't divorce yourself from connection. And that is the title of my talk. And isn't that the cutest picture of that little girl with that big cedar tree, I think, judging by the bark? And so at the root of all addiction, apparently, is abandonment disorder. And at the root of all perceived separation is the perceived disconnect from God. Now, the disconnect never happens. We just think it does, right? If there's only one, there's only one. We can never be disconnected from the one because that's all there is. If we were disconnected, there'd be more than one, right? So in the end, we cannot divorce ourselves from connection because there is only one. One breath, one life, one love, one dynamic, energetic flow that is the very beingness, the very essence, the very foundation, the very interconnectivity of everyone and everything. And the more we consciously, consistently, and reverently shift our awareness to the authenticity of being and the inherent interconnectivity of life, the less our body, our psyche, and other aspects of nature will demand our attention in order to embody that truth. And the more integrated, harmonized, and balanced our life experience will naturally be. Thank you, and so it is.